This morning, an ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor.
U.S. Coast Guard believes it's recovered human remains from the wreckage of the Titan submersible. That news came as debris from the Titan arrived at a port in Canada. The submersible, of course, imploded last week on its way to see the wreckage of the Titanic.
As the first debris from the Titan submersible is lifted to shore, investigators using cranes to lift large pieces of the wreckage, what appears to be a panel from the exterior of the sub and one of its end caps.
The company that owns a remote-operated vehicle that brought the debris to the surface has been working around the clock for 10 days to complete the salvage mission.
There is still a lot of work to be done to understand the factors that led up to this tragic incident. Investigators will continue to conduct interviews and collect evidence in the days to come.
The U.S. Coast Guard chief says the evidence will provide investigators with critical insights into the cause of this tragedy and help ensure a similar tragedy does not occur.
Investigators will also analyze the design and carbon fiber composite construction of the sub. OceanGate had been warned by industry experts and a former employee that material at extreme depths could weaken with each dive.
We have some incredible electronics inside of the sub. We have the world's only acoustic monitoring and strain gauge monitoring system on a manned submersible. 27 strain gauges, 9 acoustic gauges. We know more about what's happening in this hull than anyone has ever known. This will be one of the great moments of submersibles, in that this technology is what we need to explore the ocean depth.
In June 2023, the world learned of OceanGate, a company based in Everett, Washington, and one of their passenger-carrying submersibles, named Titan, which had just imploded on its journey down to view the famous wreck of the Titanic. There were 5 people aboard. As the sub's wreckage was salvaged and brought to the surface, so too emerged more information and new questions surrounding the company and its CEO, Stockton Rush. More and more we learned from new insights into the true nature of Titan and the path that led to its creation. In my 2023 documentary, I covered OceanGate's history from inception to catastrophe. Now, 2 years on, this documentary, through ongoing news coverage, the public hearing into the incident held by the US Coast Guard, as well as publicly released videos and documentation, aims to cover the timeline of what has happened and also what has been uncovered since that tragic day. It was on July 6th, 18 days after the implosion, that OceanGate declared that the company had ceased all operations. For a short while after the implosion, some of the content, such as promotional videos, remained on the OceanGate website, though they would eventually be removed, as would the site itself. Using the Wayback Machine website offers a look into the OceanGate site as it was. However, now, if you visit that live page, this is all you will find there. Still, the internet being the internet, a place that does not forget, meant that the majority, if not all of that lost media, had already been backed up by various individuals, re-uploaded to various platforms, and can still be viewed online today. As August rolled in, the OceanGate incident was still well and truly in the news, with more individuals coming forward to tell their story, such as Rory Golden, who was aboard Titan's support ship, the Polar Prince, when the implosion happened.
When the sub was overdue, we weren't unduly concerned because communications break down a lot in the ocean, but when the alarm was finally raised, that's when we realised that there were some serious issues. We lived in false hope for 4 days, and the one redeeming thing that we can say is that at least we know they didn't suffer, because we had this image in our heads of them being down there running out of oxygen in the freezing cold, getting terribly frightened and scared. That was actually quite more frightening than the fact that we didn't know that they had died instantly.
Those who perished were British explorer Hamish Harding, the British-Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, French diver P.H. Nargilé, and Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, who owned the sub. Rory was a close friend of P.H. Nargilé.
I was one of the last to see him. He left the ship in great spirits and great form, and he was happy out. He was going to somewhere that he wanted to be.
A plaque is being laid to honour PH. Rory had also visited the Titanic on the Titan sub.
I made a dive 2 years ago when I was on the OceanGate expeditions, and I'm here, and as are many others. That Titan had made 15 dives to the Titanic up to that point, so it had worked.
What do you think now about going in the sub? Do you wish you hadn't, or do you...
No, I don't wish that at all. It wasn't my time. Life is precious, and I got a second chance, because you never know when your time is going to come, and that certainly brought that home.
We were already aware of David Lockridge's now famous safety inspection report on Titan from 2018, when the sub had its first hull iteration. CNN had reported back in July on Mr. Lockridge's efforts in raising concerns.
David Lockridge was perhaps the only highly experienced submarine pilot who worked at OceanGate at the time, and he was hired as their director of marine operations. And as part of that role, as they transitioned from the building phase into the testing phase, he was required to sign off that this was safe to dive. So he was raising concerns on the factory floor for much of the latter half of 2017. And was just constantly being dismissed, at which point he decided he was going to take this serious inspection report and he was going to detail everything in writing and submit it in writing to Stockton Rush, the CEO, and Tony Nissen, the director of engineering. And in this, over the next sort of day it was January 18th, 2018, so more than 5 years ago, Lockridge inspected every major component of the sub and found that glue was coming away from the seams of the ballast bags. You had mounting bolts threatening to rupture things, ceiling faces that had errant plunge holes, O-ring grooves that deviated from standard parameters. Everything that could go wrong was sort of going wrong. There were snagging hazards, there were important components attached with zip ties, flammable flooring, and the interior vinyl wrapping would emit highly toxic gases upon ignition. But the number one concern for Lockridge was that the actual core of this submarine, the pressure boundary, which is what keeps people alive at 3,800 meters where Titanic is, where the external water pressure is about 6,000 pounds per square inch, is made of carbon fiber, which is not used in deep ocean submersibles because under compression, it's a capricious material. It's not made to be used under compression. It's fibers. It's like rope. It's strong under tension, but not under compression. So he examined a section of it and found that it was filled with little holes. It was delaminating these layers. It was porous. He held a light behind it and found that the light was streaming through, and he refused to sign off on the dive. And Stockton Rush said that because you refused to sign off on this manned testing, you cannot do your job as director of marine operations, and so he fired him on the spot.
More on David Lockridge later, but for now, we also heard from another ex-OceanGate employee, Rob McCallum, who had been a consultant for the company, but left in 2017. Speaking to Bloomberg, Mr. McCallum stated that he left partly due to his worries that Stockton Rush was overpromising and not taking due care. "I know Stockton well and think the world needs more Stocktons prepared to take a chance," he said, "but he's a full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes kind of guy, and in a submersible industry, extreme depth is all about precision and control." An email exchange between Mr. McCallum and Mr. Rush from 2018 was featured heavily by news outlets, with Mr. McCallum warning Stockton Rush that by pursuing his current path with Titan, he would potentially be putting an entire industry at risk. Stockton Rush replied, voicing his frustration at those who use a safety argument to stop innovation. He also said he had heard the baseless cries of "you are going to kill someone" way too often, and took it as a personal insult. In October, 4 months after the implosion, it was reported that the Coast Guard had recovered the remaining debris of Titan, including what they presumed to be human remains, which would be transported for analysis by US medical professionals. A full investigation was now well and truly underway, and though it would not be until almost a year later that the US Coast Guard would be ready to hold a public hearing into the disaster, the objectives of the hearing itself were made clear, as well as what would happen upon its completion.
After the on-scene evidence collection efforts conclude, the NBI will typically hold a formal hearing to gather additional witness testimony and evidence in a setting that is available to the public. During the course of the NBI, the board will first and primarily work to determine the cause of this marine casualty and the 5 associated deaths. The NBI, however, is also responsible for accountability aspects of the incident, and it can make recommendations to the proper authorities to pursue civil or criminal sanctions as necessary. However, any subsequent enforcement activities would be pursued under a separate investigation. Upon completion of this investigation, the NBI will issue a report to the Commandant with the evidence collected, the facts established, its conclusions, and recommendations. The final report will also be shared with the domestic and international maritime authorities I mentioned, and the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, to help improve the safety framework for submersible operations worldwide.
The U.S. Coast Guard, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, and the RCMP are all looking at the Titan tragedy. There's no timeline on how long it'll take for those investigations to be completed. The TSB said this weekend it could be 18 to 24 months. The U.S. Coast Guard said simply, it will take as long as it takes.
As 2023 neared its end, questions and speculation continued surrounding OceanGate and what caused Titan's implosion, though it was, and is still important to remember the human side and cost. Mother to Suleiman and wife to Shahzada, Christine Darwood had spoken to the BBC back in June, giving her first interview since the tragedy, just over a week after the implosion.
Just start off by asking you how you are.
I think I developed a bit of a love-hate relationship with this question. So I think what the circumstances is concerned, I'm coping, but no, I'm not doing very good. So,
what has it been like for you the last week? Can you give us a sense of just, it's unfathomable what you're going through, but what has it been like?
So the sentence, "we lost comm," I think that would be a sentence I would never want to hear in my life again. Like lost comm, as in we lost communication. I was sitting downstairs actually, having a snack, or I don't know, I was sitting with people talking, and then somebody came down and said, "we lost comm." And I think I didn't comprehend at that moment what that meant. And then it just went downhill from there. So the first day was when the communication was lost fairly early on. And then it was just waiting, like, okay, are they gonna, come back up? And we were just waiting for them to come back up. And everybody was like, oh, it's not uncommon, but they're gonna come up. So we were, but then obviously once it was confirmed they're not coming back up, and then from there it was just, yeah.
I mean, that moment when you were told that we lost comms, I imagine it must have just been a blur after that.
Well, a bit delayed, I would say, because, as I said, so we were all, well, we all thought, yeah, they're just going to come up. So that shock was delayed by about 10 hours or so. By the time they were supposed to be up again, like there was a time, I don't remember the time, but where they were supposed to be up on the surface again, and when that time passed, that's when the real shock, then, not shock, but when the worry and the not so good feeling started.
Did you have hope throughout the search?
Yes, we had loads of hope. I think that was the only thing that got us through it, because we were hoping, and there was, we talked about, things the pilots can do, like dropping weights, and, there were so many actions the people on the sub can do in order to surface. So we went, it was like this roller coaster, well, or like, I don't know, like a wave. We went, so first, okay, they would drop the weights, but then the ascent will be slower. So we were hoping for that, and we were like, okay. And then we were like constantly looking at the surface, and so there was that hope. And then there were so many things we would go through that we think, okay, it's just slow right now. It's slow right now. And then, but there was a lot of hope. There was a lot of hope. And I mean, I think I lost hope when we passed the 96 hours mark. That's when I lost hope. And that's when I even then sent a message to my family on shore. I said, I'm preparing for the worst. That's when I lost hope. But my daughter, for example, she didn't lose hope until the call with the Coast Guard, when they basically informed us that they found debris. That's when she also lost hope. And
this is 17-year-old Alina?
That is 17-year-old Alina, yes.
And she was with you on the vessel?
Yeah, she was with me on the vessel.
What made you lose hope then?
When we crossed the 96 hours. Like the 96 hours where, like, they said 4 days of oxygen in the cabin, that's when I lost hope. I tried really hard not to show it to her, and I really tried hard not to let it get to me, but that's when I lost hope.
What were your last moments or words that you shared with your husband and son? Do you remember that?
Well, we just hugged and joked, actually, because Shahzada was so excited to go down. He was like a little child.
Was that a lifelong dream of his to do?
Yes, absolutely. He had this ability of childlike excitement. So they both were so excited.
And how did Mum feel about it, or were you excited as well? For
them
their
going
adventure?
down?
Yeah.
I was really happy for them, because both of them, they really, really wanted to do that for a very long time. Because we wanted to go the first time, that was before COVID, but Suleiman wouldn't even go down there, and he was so disappointed. He's like, because they only allowed 18 plus. So, and he's like, but I want to go, and why am I not old enough? And so he was quite, but then we had to obviously postpone it because of COVID. And then he was, so it was supposed to be Shahzada and I going down. But then I stepped back and gave the space to Suleiman, because he really wanted to go.
How do you feel about that?
let's just skip that.
Much of the discussion, be it on news programmes, in articles or on various social media platforms, centred around Titan's experimental build, whether that be the materials used, the lack of certification from a classification society, or just the culture at OceanGate. The controller which was used to manoeuvre the sub and Stockton Rush's comments on safety were widely circulated, originating from a video where David Pogue, a CBS reporter, visited OceanGate back in 2022 and was given a tour of Titan by Stockton Rush himself.
So this is not your grandfather's submersible. The subs that are out there have great capability. They were made for a pure research purpose. I wanted to expand awareness of the ocean. I wanted to get as many people underwater, and I figured the way to do that is through a business approach, and then what do you need? So you needed this large volume. We only have one button, that's it.
Wait a minute, I've seen submersibles, and they are banks of controls, like cockpit after cockpit.
Exactly. Yeah, this is to other submersibles what the iPhone was to the BlackBerry. It's like, yeah, you can have a lot of buttons and things like that, or you can use modern technology to make it simple. So you don't have to worry. You can move around. People, this is a welding mat. It's good for 600 degrees centigrade. So if your iPhone burns, you can just lay it down there, and you can move around. It's comfortable. It allows you to do a lot of different things with it. So it's all the brains we stick back here.
Oh, wow.
So there's your equipment bay back there, and that's where we have our computers and programmable logic controllers, some of the emergency systems and the like, all sits back there. It's just like airplanes fly themselves. There's a lot of button pushing, but essentially they can do the landing, they can taxi, they can do the whole 9 yards. Why can't a sub do that? And the reason is nobody's spent the money to innovate because there hasn't been enough volume. And so I sort of said, let's go for it. Let's do something completely out of the ordinary.
So how do you drive it?
We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on!
So one of our earlier subs, we developed a controller, and I went and got a commercial joystick that you would use on, say, a forklift, and it had its own computer. It was $10,000, and it was big and bulky. Well, this thing is made for a 16-year-old to throw it around, and we keep a couple of spares. And so the neat thing is it's Bluetooth. I can hand it to anyone, and then you go forward and back, turn left, turn right, go down, go up, translate to the left, translate to the right.
That's exactly what my drone has, is the same controls.
Yeah. It's the intuitive thing. Everybody knows it, and yet nobody would, you can't put this on a Navy sub. You can't put it on nobody, if you want to do a research sub and comply with all the Navy rules, every circuit has to have its own switch. It's explosion proof. It's all things that made a lot of sense in the 60s and 70s. They don't make any sense now. It's better to have distributed power, low voltage, run it on Bluetooth, have lots of backups.
So these are both handles and lights?
So these, yes, they're handles and light. I got these from Camper World, and they are LED lights in here. And a nice little decorative feature. This is a fiberglass insert with this stainless steel mesh. I saw that on some lights at the University of Washington. They were decorative lights, and we thought that was a great idea.
It seems like a lot of the way you made this is by taking off-the-shelf parts and sort of MacGyvering them together.
Yeah, pretty much.
Does that not raise anybody's eyebrows in the industry?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm definitely an outlier. There's more intrigue into that than I can go into, but it is I've been considered just totally out of my you can't do this, and I think it was I don't know if it was MacArthur, but somebody said you're remembered for the rules you break. And that's the fact. And there were a lot of rules out there that didn't make engineering sense to me. They made sense at the time in the 60s and 70s, and yet there was a whole industry of people who were just going to, hey, this is how you do it. Nobody's been hurt in a commercial sub in 35 years. They're the safest vehicles on the planet, but it's, there's a limit. At some point, safety just is pure waste. I mean, if you just want to be safe, don't get out of bed, don't get in your car, don't do anything. Yeah. At some point, you're going to take some risk, and it really is a risk-reward question. I said, I think I can do this just as safely by breaking the rules.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't like that.
It's just absolutely amazing.
So this is the thing I was saying about all the sensors that are out there.
Yeah.
You can turn this on, and it's sensing this. And if we have a wrench or something, if you bang a wrench on the titanium, yeah, this is probably good. You probably don't see this. So if you look at that display, see it's wrenching a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it's almost like an EKG for the system. You can just tell its health, and you put it on the treadmill. And if at mile 2 its heart fails, then you know you got a problem. It's time to get more Lipitor.
Right.
So.
And I guess the last thing is you talk about the viewport.
Yeah. So the viewport is 7-inch thick plexiglass, which is sort of standard acrylic. And that's another thing where I broke the rules. So that viewport is there's some, according to the rules, it is not allowed. And so it is, but it's only off by like 15% of what would be allowed. Had I put more material on the inside, it would have been a non-standard design, and then it would have been way out of the pocket, even though it's stronger. So there's these weird rules that are out there. So it's the largest viewport. It will shrink. It's a semi-solid, the plexiglass. It'll come into the cabin by about 3/4 of an inch on all the pressure that's there.
Oh, and that's a good thing?
Well, that's what it is. There's certain things that you want to be buttoned down, and that's the pressure vessel. Once the pressure vessel is, you're certain it's not going to collapse on everybody, everything else can fail. Your thrusters can go, your lights can go, you're still going to be safe. I mean, anything when you're trying something outside the box, people inside the box think you're nuts. Same thing when Elon Musk was doing SpaceX. Inside the box, everything's skipping.
Back when Titan was still reported as being missing, a US correspondent from the Times, who had also worked closely with Hamish Harding, spoke about the man, his nature, and his accomplishments.
He is the nicest of people. Yes, he is an adventurer. He is a world traveller. He's somebody who, yes, he has the money to enjoy exploring his planet and taking these extreme adventure trips. He does have a hunger for just pushing the boundaries and pushing the extremes, and it seems sort of fearless at it. He's certainly, lived life large over in the last few years. I first met him in 2019 when he was doing a circumnavigation of the globe, a record-breaking flight that circled the globe over the North and South Poles. He's not boastful, he's not egotistical, he's a very accomplished guy in his own right as an aviator, runs his own private aviation company. He's jolly, he's humble, he's very endearing character. He's also somebody that, even though he was a paying passenger on a mission like this, he brings something to it. He always wanted to contribute and be more than just, what people might call a space tourist or an ocean tourist. He wanted to be part of the crew and do something meaningful during an expedition.
Concerns, though, have been raised over the safety regulations of this vessel.
Yes, there are some inklings of concern being raised now as to whether shortcuts were taken in the operation of this sub, whether the folks operating it had fully completed all protocols and had protocols and procedures and operational backup that they should have. That's a question I think we're going to see explored quite strongly in the coming days. One can bet that there's going to be investigations galore into this, and day 2 of a story unfolding like this is when you start getting whistleblowers and doubters and the people who can maybe bring some more of that insight into whether or not there were things that could have been avoided here.
On September 9th, 2024, which would turn out to be a week before the US Coast Guard's public hearing began, Business Insider reported on the upcoming event, stating that ex-OceanGate employees were set to testify, confirming the hearing was set for the 16th, with aims to examine the facts surrounding the incident and discuss how to prevent similar ones from occurring. As well as ex-OceanGate employees, also giving testimonies would be experts from various fields, including some who had direct contact with OceanGate in the past, such as NASA or Boeing. The hearing promised to be an informative one, and there was hope that many of the questions that still lingered would finally get an answer.
I would like to introduce to you Titan Marine Board of Investigation Chair, Mr. Jason Neubauer, and Lieutenant Commander Tom Whalen, the lead investigator.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am Jason Neubauer, Chair of the U.S. Coast Guard's Marine Board investigation into the loss of the Titan submersible. Today marks an important milestone in our ongoing efforts to understand and learn from the events leading up to this incident and the loss of the implosion of the Titan and the loss of the 5 lives on board. Over the past 15 months, our team has worked continuously in close coordination with multiple federal agencies, international partners, and industry experts to uncover the facts surrounding this incident. This tragedy has deeply affected not only the families and friends of those lost, but also the global maritime community and everyone involved in this investigation. The entire Marine Board extends our heartfelt sympathies to the families and friends of those lost. We recognize the immense pain and enduring grief this tragedy has caused, and we've been driven by a shared resolve to honor their memory by conducting a thorough and impactful investigation. The upcoming hearings will allow us to present our findings and hear directly from key witnesses and subject matter experts in a transparent forum. These proceedings are not just a formality. They are a critical step in our mission to understand the contributing factors that led to the incident, and even more importantly, the actions needed to prevent a similar occurrence. The board is absolutely committed to identifying those safety gaps and recommending improvements so that no family will have to endure such a loss again. Today's press conference is an opportunity to discuss the procedural aspects of the hearing and what happened and what to expect over the coming days. We are open to questions specifically related to the processes and priorities of the Marine Board investigation. However, we ask you to hold off on questions related to specific evidence or findings, as that will be covered in detail over the proceedings. The purpose of this administrative hearing is to uncover the facts surrounding the incident. We are charged to also detect misconduct or negligence by credentialed mariners, and if there's any detection of a criminal act, we would make a recommendation to the Department of Justice. But the main focus of the hearing is to find the facts and make recommendations to make sure it does not happen again. The hearing is the first step in publicly showing the proceedings. We may hold additional proceedings. There could be additional witnesses interviewed. So I would say it's hard to give a projection on the end date for the investigation. However, when the final hearings are held, the National Transportation Safety Board and U.S. Coast Guard will split off and conduct independent analysis and finish the reports. I'm confident the witnesses we have identified will provide the facts and circumstances and background that we need to complete the investigation, and that's how they were chosen. If we find that we need additional information from additional witnesses, we can definitely call them to another hearing session. That's not uncommon for complex cases, or we can do individual interviews. This is one of the most complex investigations that I've ever been involved with, and it stems from the offshore nature of the incident, the depth at which it occurred. That created many challenges for recovering evidence, from a depth, and then maintaining it to a state that it could be forensically tested, and then sharing and cooperating with the multiple jurisdictions that have jurisdiction over the investigation itself. The Coast Guard averages about 1 Marine Board investigation hearing annually. The Commandant level Marine Board is the highest, and out of thousands of investigations conducted, less than 1 rise to this level. We've recently had some district formal investigations for fires on small passenger vessels, but the last Marine Board, it has been since a while. Certainly when there are passenger fatalities in any incident or crew member fatalities, that does raise the level of the investigation, the scope. And like, for example, in this case, we are going all the way back for the entire operations of OceanGate. And we're looking at the entire safety framework that's in place to oversee these types of operations. And I think you see that level of depth when there is loss of life. Yeah, the purpose of this hearing is really to make the necessary safety recommendations, and those safety recommendations can go domestically to the Coast Guard that oversees, federal regulations for these types of operations. But more importantly, I think we can also go globally to the International Maritime Organization that oversees the operations on the high seas and in foreign countries. So I think that's another possible outcome of this hearing, international standards, or recommendations towards those standards.
And so began the Marine Board of Investigation's public hearing. Only taking a break over the weekend, the hearing would go on for 9 days, concluding on September 27th. The hearing would delve into all kinds of topics, from OceanGate's history and journey, up to and including the manufacturing of the Titan sub, to their operation afterwards, helping to fill in gaps of information left by the scattered news updates we had been drip-fed until that point. Now, it was time to hear from the people who were actually there during OceanGate's dives, some of them actually inside Titan. The topics of safety, a lack of classification, financial strain, the culture of the company, as well as Stockton Rush's influence, were all points of interest.
In 2016, when you came in with the company, how far along was the Titan project?
There was nothing. It was a concept. There was no material, nothing had been wound, no material had been fabricated, nothing. It had been made clear to me from the outset I was coming across to assist with the build. My experience working with class was going to be paramount in actually producing a successful product. That was the intent, and yeah, there was nothing at all. They were testing things on Cyclops 1, and it was still in its infancy. The amount of dives that we did in that sub, that systems would fail, the MSLRs, the dive platform, there'd be issues with that. Everything at that time, even then, it was experimental, but at the same time, the intention was once everything was finished with Cyclops 1 and the company and APL were happy with everything, those systems would be fully not integrated, so they weren't going to get moved from Cyclops, but they would be built hardier, stronger, more reliable, and they were going to get built for Titan. When I moved across, there was nothing. Nothing was produced, nothing was finalized with APL. There was a serious shift in the organization from spring 2016 through to, I would say, summer 2016, where the applied physics lab were phased out. Unfortunately, after the incident on the Andrea Doria, I was phased out of the project completely. I was told everything was going to be getting done in-house with Tony Nissen and his team, who I had no confidence in whatsoever.
In March of 2016, what were you hired on as?
The Director of Engineering.
Okay. And what were your roles and responsibilities in that job as the Director of Engineering?
I was pitched by OceanGate that the Cyclops 2 craft was nearly complete in the sense that all the items were in place. They just needed somebody to take it over the finish line. Originally, I was going to be the Director of Marine Operations as well. They were having some issues in the Marine side, and that's the execution side. So in their mind's eye, I was going to put together the parts and then just start executing it.
Was there any mention of having this submersible classed or built to a classification standard?
So Stockton would go back and forth on whether or not he was going to have it classed, but the classing conversation was always there, and the inspection. And when I came on, it was going to be a much more collaborative effort. When we would talk, he would like to have it, or he would have liked to have it done. It seemed like a dead end for him every step of the way.
This promotional video of a 2016 dive to the Andrea Doria wreck site was an interesting one, considering what we would later go on to hear about it. I think this video is a good example of some of the media OceanGate shared, both on its website and on social media, that painted a very different picture to the actual truth.
We're going to have Wendy as comms on the small boat. We're going to have Stockton as pilot on Cyclops. We're going to have David as co-pilot on Cyclops. We're going to have Renata, Chris, Arthur as crew on Cyclops.
You're lifting off.
Roger, liftoff.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
Ready. Let's see what we got here.
Clear to Lars.
Yep.
Can confirm that tracking is active and we are receiving active pings.
Cyclops, comms, over.
Comms check. All good.
Cyclops, comms, over.
We are 7 meters off the bottom.
Bottom in sight. That's fine. Just this. Bottom in sight. Flat sand. 2 meters. Oh, you see the wreck on. Right to the starboard. Wreck's on the starboard. You want to go port. You want to go port. We're going into the wreck right now.
There it is.
There it is. Right there.
Topside, for information, we are 30 meters off the bow, returning to surface.
Here we are on the surface.
Woohoo!
Big bubble.
Lovely. Is it locked? You're locked. Yep.
More footage of the dive was included in Netflix's 2025 OceanGate documentary, and coupled with David Lockridge's testimony, it appears the dive may not have been the smooth, professional operation portrayed to the public.
Wow, we're very, very close. There's debris all around us.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
That's a shot right out here.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I'm just saying we're a little close.
Now the wreck's only 3 meters off to the port side. Stop. So, whoa! Come down! Come down! Come down! Come down! Come down! Come down! Keep coming down.
Once they return to the support ship, you can see the sheer anger on Mr. Lockridge's face, the result of his frustration with Stockton Rush. And this was, as he explains, the beginning of the end for him, as he would soon be distanced more and more from the project.
With Stockton, it was a complete turnaround for me. He never really spoke to me the rest of the trip. The dynamic changed. I was phased out completely.
And why do you believe you were phased out?
Because I embarrassed the CEO on the Andrea Doria wreck. I didn't mean to, but there was an incident on the Doria It was meant to be my dive. I was meant to take 4 paying clients down to the wreck. We were going to be doing 3D modelling of the wreck. And the plan was I was going to be dropping down over several days, keeping distance from the wreck completely, and basically circumnavigating the wreck at 50 metres away and carrying out sonar scans to create this 3D model of the wreck itself, which, in all good intentions, it was so that divers, future divers, can see exactly what's happening with the decay and degradation of the hull of the Doria itself. It is a very famous vessel, but deadly. I mean, I don't know today, but at the time, I think there was like 18 deaths on the Doria with technical divers diving on it. Unfortunately, the CEO decided that he wanted to take it down. I objected, because I know sometimes he could do things to please himself. He told me I was staying out. I objected again. I was sort of reined in at the time. Just remember, I'm the CEO, you're just an employee. I eventually persuaded him to let me come in on the dive. So we reduced the paying passengers down to 3. And Stockton said he was taking it down. The first attempt that we did when we were on the surface, the MS Lars just got blown away with the currents. We did tell him, he wouldn't listen. I tried to give my input in terms of the weather. It's a very exposed area. When we went to do the dive platform was submerged down to its working depth, 12 feet, 15 feet. Took it down so that it's away from the adverse weather conditions. He attempted to take it off. He didn't do it very well. He ended up bending the dive skids on the bottom, the landing skids, which are usually flat, which contain the drop weights. We deployed diver to verify. And anyway, we got the thumbs up. He departed from the MS Lars at depth, came up to the surface, which we usually did, established main communications with the vessel. And from there, he took it down. I kept saying, please keep your distance. Don't tell me what to do. That was the conversation. He decided to go straight for the wreck. He came straight down, hard on the bottom. No trimming, no ballast, nothing. Smash straight down on the bottom. Visibility went everywhere. You could see a silhouette, and it was the 2 clients that were sitting in the viewing dome right next to the acrylic. And they were like, oh my God, we are right on the wreck. So I said to Stockton, please, all stop telling me what to do. Stockton, all stop. We have to see what's going on here. We have to look at our surroundings, which is standard practice for any competent submersible pilot. And from there, visibility cleared. We could see metal plates, and we could clearly see the starboard side of the bow of the Andrea Doria. We could see all the debris, we could see hawser lines, we could see panels coming off. It was an absolute mess. So I said, Stockton, please, and he just kept arguing with me in the sub. Very unbecoming of a submersible pilot. I was trying to guide him. I'm trying to give the best course of action to get him out of it. No matter what, I'm doing this. So he blew air in the tank, and the ballast tank came off the bottom, motored full stick ahead, unbeknownst to everybody else, and I don't know why. He decided to turn the submersible 180 degrees at speed, still coming ahead, so he wasn't looking at his surroundings. He could have quite easily went up into the viewing dome, he could have went up into the tower, because it's got a clear acrylic hatch on there, and basically drove at full speed into the port side of the bow, and we could hear the cracking of the fairing as he got us jammed in underneath. At that point, it was unprofessional behaviour of him. He started to panic. We're stuck, we're stuck, we're stuck. Repeatedly, every time I went to take the controller from him, he pushed it further and further behind him, inside the submersible itself. At that point, it went on and on and on. I'm looking up inside the upper hatch. I could see where there was fishing line draping over the top of the sub, all the metal rebar. debris everywhere. He never once got out the seat in the back of the sub to go and look at his surroundings. And eventually it took one of the paying clients to turn round, and Renata, who you're interviewing on Thursday, she shouted at Stockton to give me the effing controller. She had tears in her eyes. He reached round behind him. I had my head up inside the tower, so I'm still looking at the wreck, and he clattered it off the right side of my head. The controller landed on the deck plate. One of the buttons came off, the robust PlayStation controller. And I picked it up, repaired it, and had us out 10-15 minutes. And then, because people were cheering and the passengers were obviously very grateful for what I did, which to me is just my job, at that point he stopped talking to me. And it went on from there.
Speaking in her own testimony, Renata Rojas, a mission specialist who was aboard Cyclops 1 on the Andrea Doria dive, and who David Lockridge references, told a very different story of how the dive went. And this was the beginning of a trend that seemed to grow clearer as the hearing went on, but more on that later.
You know, it took a long time, but we saw dolphins go by, whales, so it was actually pretty amazing to see. Second time we went down, landed gently on the sand, and we were only like maybe 50 meters from the bow. I think they had it on the sonar that it was 100 meters, they could see it. In a little iPads, I think it was 50 meters. So I couldn't see it on my iPad, but they could see it on their sonar. We started navigating towards the wreck. Communications were spotty. They had to talk very loudly on the microphone in order for them to hear, and it was hard to hear them, but we had communications. As we got closer to the Doria, took a couple of scans. At some point, it was very close. The propellers would pick up a lot of sand, so it's low visibility to begin with. But with the propellers lifting off the sand, it's not that very easy to see. So we would go and stand, and make decisions of, okay, where are we, etc. At some point, we saw the bow. We actually asked them to turn the lights off so we can kind of see where we were. They turned the lights back on, making a plan to kind of go around so we could take a scan. And at some point, we ended up right below the bow, in the prow. If you know, you guys are maritime, you know what the prow is. We were at the prow. In a position, I think, was the sand had like a hole, and you could definitely see the top of the bow on the hatch. We did have a lot of room to maneuver. So Stockton was trying to get us out hopping, doing bunny hops. It's like, so he wouldn't race. We didn't want to touch anything. Sand is very muddy there, so it's not easy to kind of ski out. It's not like you can push yourself as you're skiing. Then at some point, Lockridge took the controls. He put his head on top of the hatch, where you could actually see very well the bow, and very nicely drove us out in one sweep. I was actually very impressed. And then that was it. We took pictures of the bow, claps everybody, and went back to the surface, took pictures, and it was great. David Lockridge's account of the events, and he must have gone on a different dive. Nobody was panicking, nobody was crying, and there was definitely no swearing and yelling.
Do you know, you said Mr. Lockridge took the controls. Do you know if Mr. Rush, since he was the pilot on that, correct, going down, do you know why he had to take the controls?
Lockridge or David?
Well, Mr. Lockridge.
I don't know why he had to take the controls. He kept asking for the controls, though. The pilot was, to me, clearly Stockton.
And he took you down there?
Yes.
And then at some point...
And he was driving the whole time, yeah.
Except for the last part, correct?
Yeah, the last part as we were trying to maneuver out of the prow. Lockridge had a better view going into the viewport, not the viewport, the hatch. So he was in a better position to kind of maneuver and not touch anything and maneuver out. So he asked for the controller. Stockton gave him the controller and he drove us out.
A very different account indeed. I also wanted to touch upon the severing of the relationship with APL, or the University of Washington Applied Physics Lab, as this would be one of several companies OceanGate would reach out to, but eventually cut ties with, in one way or another.
You had mentioned earlier that the Cyclops 1 was previously a class submersible.
That's correct.
And when it came to be owned by OceanGate, there was modifications that were made that took it out of class.
Very much so, yes. The entire control system, steering system, propulsion, everything was removed. And I think that is why when I saw that document in 2015, the approval letter or report from who I think it was DNV, classing the hull, the acrylic and the upper hatch, I can see why that is all they would recertify. Fortunately, at that time, we had excellent engineering support from APL. So they provided electrical, electronics, mechanical, and I worked very closely with them until Tony Nissen started.
Why did OceanGate and University of Washington Applied Physics Lab stop working together?
It was the engineering. We were butting heads too much on there, and OceanGate felt that it was better to terminate that and let their group take over the engineering. The mindset and the philosophy on engineering and developing a new product, we'd had too many conflicts on how we would go about doing that.
What was your opinion of the submersible, specifically Cyclops 2, which later became Titan? What was your opinion of that submersible at the time that that OceanGate and Applied Physics Lab stopped working together?
With the initial concept, it was early enough in it that we felt like there was a very good chance it could be successful. The design looked like it was heading down the right path on there. Once we severed that relationship, I don't really know the direction. I would hear bits and pieces. I don't believe Stockton and I talked for quite a while after we severed on there, so I was only hearing bits and pieces of information on what was going on. But we actually felt fairly decent, like the direction. We knew that the design was not complete and it was not ready to go full-scale fabrication by any means. But we felt like it at least had a chance of heading down the right path.
Were there specific design aspects that you recall as to that were not completed before the University of Washington and OceanGate went your separate ways?
Yeah, the carbon fiber hull final design was not complete in my mind. We had some preliminary FEA on there. We had the third scale test that had some failures in it. So in my mind, that design was not complete because of those failures. They had not figured out what happened on those failures from my perspective. And I had not seen an effort to modify or to change the design based on what they saw in there. The titanium spheres, that was about the time we left is when they were shifting away from the glass dome on the forward part. They were going more towards titanium spheres. So that was very early in the design process. We had done enough work to say this is the ballpark so we can at least talk to foundries and start getting a feel for what it would cost to fabricate this and how they would go about doing that. But the design was nowhere near complete on that portion of it either.
Footage from 2016, taken during the pressure testing of a third scale model, where we also see the concerning amount of individual events being recorded from the test.
Each one of these pulses is some kind of an event in the hull.
This clip really stood out to me as showing Stockton Rush's presence and influence, just by looking at the faces of those either speaking to him or standing nearby.
Let's just see how she settles down, but that's a lot of events.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Okay.
Where did it go to?
Went to 4,000. Yeah, about 4,009.
But yeah, the fact that we didn't even get to the last pressure we did last time.
That's
solves a lot.
That day, they were super excited, and when it imploded, they got pissed.
Today is a critical joining of the titanium and the carbon fiber. That seal needs to be uniform and small, but not too small.
Level, do a good cleaning, check the surface out, check measurements. Between the two components, really what's holding them together and allowing them to move together is the glue. And so you want nice, even movement. It's the glue that's holding the family together, and we want to make sure it's right. Ceramic fiber.
And it's pretty simple, but if we mess it up, there's not a lot of recovery. The glue's very thick, so it's not like Elmer's glue. It's like peanut butter.
All the things to shortcut.
You figure anything over 30?
That's pretty low, huh?
That block there. This is the point of no return right here.
I'm good already north-south, east to west. I think there is a third one.
You guys ready? Good?
Oh yeah, so that will be the pressure vessel for Cyclops 2. It'll go to 4,000 meters. It'll be the deepest diving carbon fiber sub ever built. When it goes to 4,000 meters, it'll be the only one out there. I'm going to be the first guy in the sub, so we will see.
As well as severing ties with APL, Boeing had also been involved in 2013 and provided a feasibility study for OceanGate's carbon fibre hull, though they had no hand in the actual manufacturing. The study recommended a hull thickness of 7, even up to 10 inches, but when OceanGate went in-house to finally manufacture Titan, the final hull would be only 5 inches thick. The creation of the hull was commissioned to Spencer Composites.
We noted in the feasibility study that the cylindrical hull over time was decreased from 10 inches to 7 inches. As I previously stated, we now know that that final hull was 5 inches thick. Was Boeing involved in any conversations that reduced the thickness of the hull from 7 inches to 5 inches?
There may have been conversations where we were asked about that, but in general, we did a feasibility study, preliminary analysis, and came up with a 7-inch hull that we thought was potentially feasible. Basically a concept or a trade study output. That design utilized unnotched composite allowables and didn't consider, any of like the future detailed design work or effects of defects or anything, that would have been in a detailed configuration and analysis. And so that, our expectation would be not that the hull got thinner, but the hull would have gotten thicker in order to account for some of those potential defects or other considerations in the design.
Despite no successful scale model test being completed, or the recommendations from Boeing's study being taken on board, OceanGate pressed on in-house. David Lockridge explained seeing the components arrive on the shop floor as Titan began to take shape.
So Stockton decided to do all engineering in-house. He said he had lost confidence in APL. I think that was mostly a time thing in his head. As I said, he could be very impatient. So he introduced Tony Nissen and brought him in as a director of engineering for the Titan build, which was going to Titanic. As we all know, they'd already put everything online that submersible was going to the Titanic. So what happened was, over the course of a few months, Tony took over and I don't know what the relationship was with the head of APL and Stockton. Looking at the social media side of things, they did maintain some form of relationship to proceed with these third-scale models that they tested. And but I couldn't tell you how far APL got with the final design of Titan. And all I know is when Tony took over, they were going to be changing a lot. So me being quite vocal, I said to Stockton I wasn't happy that we were phasing out APL. It got to the point that Tony and Stockton, I remember one day Dave came in to see me. We used to borrow dive gear from each other. And Dave came in to see me, and they stood in the corner, wouldn't even speak to him. And when Dave left, they told me I've never to speak to that gentleman again, which is ridiculous.
Who was never to speak to the gentleman again?
I was never to speak to Dave Dyer again. This is during 2016. So I had to have no correspondence with Dave Dyer. That's what I was told.
And that was said to you by who?
Oh, that was said to me by Stockton Rush and Tony Nissen.
What was the relationship that you witnessed between Mr. Tony Nissen and the University of Washington Applied Physics Lab?
Tony wasn't happy with APL. Stockton wasn't happy with APL. The two of them were very vocal, saying that they did not want APL to do anything else with regards to the design concept and the build of Titan. They were going to do it all themselves.
Do you know why they made that decision?
Can I say arrogance? Thinking they could do this on their own without proper engineering support. I mean proper engineering support from people that have built things that have been subsea. May not be submersibles, but known products. Proper engineers that work for the university.
Did Tony Nissen have any, that you were aware of, any previous submersible design or construction?
He had none. And after the Doria, when Stockton pretty much stopped talking to me rationally, I was called round one day. It was the end of the summer 2016, and Chief Operating Officer and Neil McCurdy and Stockton Rush, we got talking. I just thought it was a general chit-chat, coffee, and it led to Stockton saying they were no longer willing to pay for my wife or my daughter's permanent residence. I wasn't happy. I seriously voiced my displeasure in what they decided to do. I knew fine well it's because it's not embarrassing, but you know, I probably did. I embarrassed him in front of clients. He wasn't happy, and I knew that was the turning point in our relationship within OceanGate. And anyway, went in the following morning, late, I did it intentionally, and the CEO, Stockton, came up and he said, I'm so sorry for yesterday. I've had a change of heart and I have decided I can't lose you. I need you on this project and I will pay for it. But you have to sign this addendum to your employment contract stipulating that if you leave over the next 12 months, you will reimburse us. So I said, okay, it's simple enough. Once I signed it, I was told by Stockton, and make sure you do not tell the immigration attorney that I've made you do this. So I obviously told my wife. So we did this, we proceeded on. So yeah, that's where we were at with that.
Getting back to the classification, and your understanding that you thought that the Titan was going to be classed by a classification society. At what point did you realize that it was not going to be classed? Were you told, or did you basically figure it out on your own?
Well, I mean, it was common sense that they weren't going to do it, but officially I was told repeatedly, anytime I said to Stockton or Tony, I'm quite happy dealing with ABS, Lloyds, GL, if we're getting these people in. It's in hand. It's in hand. Engineering are dealing with everything. Now, I knew what they were like. Tony and I had run-ins close on daily basis. At that point, the relationship had broken down with myself and Stockton. In terms of any time I had any issue or my team had any issue and I would report it, I don't know. I maybe came across as the troublemaker within the organisation because I was so outspoken on any issues, in terms of my confidence in the inexperienced engineering team that were employed by OceanGate.
Were you involved in the winding of the first or prototype Titan hull at Spencer Composites?
Not at all.
Were you asked to be part of that process?
Not at all.
Were you involved in the design or construction of any parts of the first Titan hull?
Nothing.
And as an experienced engineer and operator of submersibles with over 25 years of experience, why do you think they dismissed your concerns?
They cost cutting, bad engineering decisions. I would say that's the two main things. The desire to get to the Titanic as quickly as they could to start making profit. I knew nothing about the financials side of things, but there was a big push to get this done, and a lot of steps along the way were missed, and it was pretty evident, not just to myself, and we all voiced concerns about what was happening in terms of the engineering of Titan, and even more so when the components started arriving at the facility in Everett during 2017.
So in the fall of 2017, the first Titan hull begins to come together. So the winding is complete and the new parts begin to come into OceanGate. Were you there at the time?
Correct, I was.
And at that point, what was your role and responsibility with regards to the new Titan hull and the parts coming in and reviewing? Were you part of the review process of these things coming in to your submersible?
Initially, no, not until I was asked, which is on the voice recording, which you have all heard, which and Stockton states in there, he did ask me to do an inspection of the Titan. This is once the vehicle was complete. So up until then, anytime any of the components would come in, my desk overlooked the loading area where stores would come in. The components would come onto the shop floor before they were taken through to the engineering department. I looked at everything, and there wasn't anything, and I mean anything, on that build, or pre-build, basically when the components were there, that gave me any confidence in them producing an efficient product. Nothing. And as I have reiterated, and I probably will continue to do so, I was very vocal about it to all of them, every director within the organisation. It didn't help the relationship, but at the end of the day, safety comes first. And anytime you're going in a sub, most important thing is going home safe to your families, not going and making money and pushing the envelope as everybody keeps quoting in the news. It's nothing to do with that. Don't take risks that are unnecessary with faulty, and I mean faulty, deficient equipment. And everything that came in had anomalies or deficiencies in the product itself. I wasn't the only one that saw this. There was a lot of people saw every component coming in.
Were you involved in the carbon fiber hull winding process?
I watched the whole thing. That's it. So in the process itself, you're talking about the physical build of it?
Yes.
Yeah, so I set up GoPro cameras and watched most of it. I think it took a month, so 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. It was a long time. But I went and watched it. We were just watching for bad behavior. Is it more than anything? Not that we didn't trust them, just carbon fiber structures are really all about process, and you want to make sure that the process is done well, so we wanted to watch that.
Did you ever visit Spencer Composites, and what was your technical opinion of the facilities and processes?
A lot, yeah. Facility-wise, it's a bit dirty for me, but it was a little bit of a concern of ours. Thought, well, let's just make sure that nobody's blowing the leaf blower around here because of all this dust while they're winding it. It definitely wasn't aviation grade clean facility for sure.
And as the director of engineering, did you make all engineering decisions?
No.
Did you make any engineering decisions?
Yes.
And who would make the majority of the engineering decisions?
It was Stockton, for sure. And so my job as the director of engineering is more about rounding up the cattle than it is about making all the choices. Showing the leadership to the younger people that are coming in, but then maybe to raise the technical questions when it's appropriate and go do that research. If I could control it, or if I did control it, it was a significant problem or a significant issue, which maybe we'll talk about. That's how 18 strain gauges got on the hull. I wasn't going to settle for anything else. So an engineering decision like that, I made it. And Stockton and I argued about it a lot. The technical decision for, well, let's say the technical decisions for the case itself, the carbon fiber structure, as Brian Spencer. I could raise the alarms all I want, but it's Brian Spencer, and I look at Stockton, and he'd say, this is what we got. This is what we're going with. Most people would just eventually back down from Stockton. Like it was almost death by 1,000 cuts in most of the things.
In January 2018, Titan was nearing completion, and David Lockridge was asked to conduct his now famous quality inspection report on OceanGate's new submersible, which, unbeknown to him, would ultimately lead to the end of his employment.
And when did you begin conducting this inspection?
So, in terms of the report itself, it was in the January. We had a conversation, myself, Stockton, Tony was there as well, a week to 2 weeks prior to this 18th of January. And Stockton, as you hear on the voice recording, I was asked to inspect Titan before the handover, not do a quality inspection of Titan, which is on the record, on the voice recording of my dismissal, which you all hold and have heard.
What's the difference between an inspection or a quality inspection?
Okay, for me, common sense. If you're asked to inspect something, it gives the person inspecting it the opportunity and the ability to take notes, provide recommendations, their dissatisfaction with anything, and submit that. It's not just a case of scribbling something down on a bit of A4 paper and handing it over. To do an inspection of something, you have to have a record in place. And for me, this was my opportunity, being asked to do it prior to the sub being handed over, and abomination of a sub, but prior to that being handed over, this was my opportunity to raise everything that I had seen during the build and the final build of Titan.
So the first component or deliverable you have is the viewport, O-ring, and fasteners.
Yeah. So the viewport, when it came in, we saw it. I was told it's completely out width of standard design parameters. I was told that when it arrived, which isn't a good sign. On the inspection notes, the viewport was installed by OceanGate Engineering Department prior to this inspection. This is my inspection of 2018. No thorough inspection of the acrylic or the O-ring could be carried out on the inspection day. I was not allowed to be there when all this was being put together. For a dome, there was pitting and scoring evident on the dome itself, which is the titanium dome. For a dome ceiling face. So at the 12 o'clock position, it must be noted that a plunge hole is present. This will create the least path of resistance of seawater on this critical ceiling face. A double dovetail O-ring groove has been machined to captivate the O-ring, yet with the plunge hole, this type of O-ring groove is out with standard design parameters. In my experience, the potential for this issue will be exacerbated by if we see any sort of buckling of the materials during the immense pressure changes as we go deeper. So what we're looking at there is this hull was wound under the supervision of Tony Nissen, Stockton Rush. The hull itself, the intent at this point, originally, the hull, when I was involved in the project, was going to be 7 to 10 inches thick. The design decision jumped on and it was changed to 5 inches thick. That was the thickness of the carbon hull itself, all the way around. These sections that you can see there What happened was when the hull came in and the cut-off sections were brought to the unit at Everett, the cut-off sections were the excess from the design overall length of Titan itself. And what happened was these sections of excess came in. The CEO and the engineering director decided that let's chop these up and give them to the clients that have paid to go on the Titanic. Let's give them out to the staff at OceanGate. We were all handed these. 1, 2, yep. Now, when the hull came in, I could see all the imperfections on it. This is one of the samples that I was given by the engineering director, which came from these cut-off sections. And please look at the state of it. There was so many delaminations, so many voids. The imperfections were incredible. There was glue runs everywhere. And that's a red flag. So I will say it, Stockton liked to do things on the cheap, okay? There was obviously cost implications. There was a lot of investment went into this, but that image that you're looking at on the right-hand side is Stockton's idea of a scrubber unit. Stockton decided not to go down the route of using a known manufacturer. Now, as you can see, it's a plastic tote from Home Depot, still got the labelling on it, and a fan from a PC, a computer. He wanted to do a test on it. I obliged just to humour him, and we did that in the sub, and it didn't work. I don't know if they used this contraption inside Titan. You would need to speak to somebody that was involved afterwards. But during 2017 and the start of 2018, when I was there, that was his intent, to use that device. There was so much I could have put into that report that would have genuinely looked like I was pointing the finger at the CEO. And that, it wasn't my intent. I didn't want to lose my job. I wanted to go to Titanic, you know, it was on my bucket list. I wanted to dive this, but to dive it safely.
The audio recording that Mr. Lockridge refers to in his testimony included the moment he was fired from the company. It also highlights the anger that inspection report created in Stockton Rush, and also the mindset of the OceanGate CEO.
What led up to this, and what's your goal with this document?
Well, no, the goal for this document for me is the safety of anybody that goes in there, including you.
He was angry. He was so angry. It's not the most angry I've seen him or heard. But that day was pretty bad.
It's completely opposite of what everyone else says. Everyone says, oh, carbon fiber can't handle compression. They're full of shit, and I've proven them to be full of shit. You know, it's been an 8-year project. I know what the hell I'm talking about. Okay. So, keep going.
In terms of you going in the submersible, I am so against you doing it.
I understand.
We should be putting that sub on a wire.
A wire is not without safety issues, for one. Well, and secondly, this is how we're doing it, period. I've looked at it. You know, what you do is you set a testing program where you do it incrementally. It's not going to just go to 3100 and be perfect, and at 3200 it all goes away. That ain't going to happen, and I will put my life on the line to say that ain't going to happen. I don't want anybody in this company who is uncomfortable with what we're doing. We're doing weird shit here, and I am definitely out of the mold. There's no question. I'm doing things that are completely non-standard, and I'm sure the industry thinks I'm a fucking idiot. That's fine. They've been doing that for 8 years. And I'm going to continue on the way I'm doing, but I'm not going to force people to join my religion if they don't want to.
I just feel a tad let down right now with your comments. I'm pretty gutted, to be honest with you. This is the first time on paper I've ever put any health and safety concerns. And by God, Stockton, you know, every expedition we've had issues. And I've been there for you. Every single expedition.
I'm not denying that.
Do you now want to let me go? That's the question.
I don't see we have a choice.
Welcome. We're here in, for now, sunny Port of Everett, Washington, with Cyclops, what was Cyclops 2, Titan, the latest submersible that OceanGate has developed. I want to welcome the entire team we have hiding out here on the dock. I also want to thank all our shareholders who have been amazing supporters of this project, with whom we couldn't do it. Spencer Composites, who made the 5-inch thick carbon fiber pressure vessel, the largest pressure vessel ever made for human occupancy, possibly the largest pressure vessel ever made of that thickness. We have we're standing on this wonderful launch platform. Was designed by us and built by Everest Marine here in Washington State. It's been an amazing launch platform, allows us to launch in amazing sea states that no one else could handle. With me, I have Tony Neeson, our Director of Engineering. This has been an amazing engineering feat. We had some great early support from the Applied Physics Lab, but taking all of that engineering in-house, developing, hiring, and working with an amazing team of some older and some younger engineers, we have some incredible electronics inside of the sub. We have the world's only acoustic monitoring and strain gauge monitoring system on a manned submersible. 27 strain gauges, 9 acoustic gauges. We know more about what's happening in this hull than anyone has ever known. This will be one of the great moments of submersibles, in that this technology is what we need to explore the ocean depth. We're going to go to 4,000 meters after our testing in the Bahamas, assuming all things pan out as we expect and we validate our engineering. And that will open up 50% of the planet. Cyclops 3, which is in development, will go to 6,000 meters, and that will open up 98% of the planet. It's our belief that without innovative technologies and innovative business plans, where we are having individuals help us by supporting our Titanic survey expedition and the research that's going to be done there, without that, we won't get the kind of exploration we need in the ocean. And that the days of government funding are gone. It really needs to be a private enterprise, just as exploration was at the turn of the last century, where people with means make the exploration possible. And with our virtual and artificial reality component, we're going to be able to make that accessible to everyone on the planet, so we can all see the ocean wonders firsthand. So to Tony, would you do the honors and christen the Titan?
Absolutely. Thank you, Stockton. And with this, I dechristen Titan.
Following his dismissal, David Lockridge reached out to OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and was placed under their whistleblower protection scheme. He attempted to raise his concerns regarding OceanGate and their plans to dive Titan, though was told his case was in a queue. Despite his efforts, OSHA were slow to act, something that would be addressed in the Coast Guard's eventual final report into the Titan incident. OceanGate, on the other hand, were swift in their response to Lockridge's actions. They filed a lawsuit against him and his wife, as described in a BBC article. In July 2018, OceanGate sued Lockridge and his wife Carol for breach of contract, misappropriation of trade secrets, fraud, and theft, amongst other allegations. The following month, Lockridge countersued for unfair dismissal. Lockridge maintains that throughout the process, OSHA was slow and failed to protect him from the ongoing retaliation he was receiving from OceanGate. I provided all of the documentation to OSHA. I was on the phone to OSHA every few weeks, he said. OSHA did nothing.
I feel bad for David. I really do. It shouldn't have happened. That day, Stockton told me it would be nothing for him to spend $50,000 to ruin somebody's life.
Did he say that to you in regards to David?
Yeah, that changed my life in that company. Changed how I had to manage the engineering department. I had to make sure that nobody spoke up. I worked for somebody that is probably borderline clinical psychopath, but definitely a narcissist. How do you manage a person like that who owns the company?
By the end of 2018, legal proceedings were settled, and part of the agreement being that Lockridge withdrew his complaint to OSHA. OceanGate pressed on in their local marina in Everett, with shallow dives to perform system tests before moving further afield for deeper waters. Now in the Bahamas, OceanGate continued to perform system test dives, including an unmanned dive to 4,000 meters in June 2018. In December, which was logged as Dive 39 in Titan's dive log, Stockton Rush performed a solo dive in Titan, planned to go to 4,000 meters, though stopping just shy at 3,939 meters. Once back at the surface, celebrations were well documented. Still, despite the champagne and Mr. Rush's calm exterior, once again, new footage emerged and showed him inside Titan during the dive.
Getting that fucking crack looking. I'll get your attention.
In early 2019, Patrick Leahy, owner of Triton Submarines, a world leader in submersible manufacturing, was in the Bahamas on holiday and by chance was approached by OceanGate.
I actually saw the craft in 2019, very briefly. I was on a sailing vacation with my family in the Apicos in the Bahamas, and I walked up to the bar, as you do, and I had a Triton t-shirt on, as I often do. And the team walked up to me and asked, why I had the Triton shirt on, and told them that it was my company. They told me they had a sub in the Bahamas that they were testing, and would I like to see it? To which I said yes. And they said the next day they would take me over and show me the vehicle. That was the one and only time that I saw the sub. That was in 2019. I think it was around March. It was just before, coincidentally, we went out and did our dives to 10,932 meters, or 35,865 feet.
And when you went to go visit the submersible, what was your impression of the working environment?
Well, I mean, I didn't specifically expect or plan to see it. It was just coincidental. And so the next day they took me over and gave me a quick sort of tour of it. And, I wasn't particularly impressed by what I saw, and I told them, they were very nice people and they seemed well-intentioned. I just said it looked to me like a lot of the stuff was not quite ready for prime time, and that there were many things in it that I thought had not been executed as appropriately as they should be. And there were a few things that I saw that concerned me, like they had these glass spheres that they were using as junction boxes, and I said, you can't have those on a human-occupied vehicle. And if you do, you need to fill them with liquid.
In April 2019, another deep dive was conducted in Titan with Stockton Rush, as well as 3 other crew members this time.
No, I meant the bang.
Good trip, gentlemen. How are you doing? Hey.
Carl Stanley, a submersible operator and owner of the Roatan Institute of Deep Sea Exploration, was on the dive, and his testimony was one that did not hold back in outlining the concerning sounds Titan was making and the transparency of OceanGate. He also spoke about Stockton Rush's behaviour during the dive.
So I was looking back through all my emails, and my relationship with Stockton goes back at least 10, possibly up to 15 years. So when I heard he was doing something out of carbon fiber, I told him, I want to be a part of that. I saw that as an opportunity to dive deeper than I probably would have ever gotten to dive again. And I went out to Washington and I gave him a week of free labor working on the first version of the launch and recovery vehicle. Well, not free. It was with the understanding that one day, somewhere, when the carbon fiber vehicle was done, that I was going to get a ride, which is basically what happened. I mean, I basically just got an email from him out of the blue saying, this is your chance, come to the Bahamas, and I did. And we dove to over 12,000 feet. And when we went out, it was Stockton, myself, not sure how to say his name, but he was in his early 20s, and he was a sonar technician for a third-party supplier, I believe, and his duty was something like calibrating the sonar. And then it was a friend of Stockton from childhood who was, I believe, the COO on the company. And he told us to be prepared for noises. And he had recently done the solo dive on his own and basically just said, this is going to make noise and brace yourselves. In retrospect, there were a lot of red flags that now, after the implosion and learning more and putting different pieces of the puzzle together, start making sense and are kind of clues. But so there are 4 of us in there. Obviously, there could have been 5. There are many people back on shore that would have eagerly, he would have been appeasing customers waiting to go, filling that 5th seat. But there was only the 4 of us. And it made a lot of noise. And when we got down there, and another clue in retrospect is we didn't tow out. It's a fairly gentle sloping bottom. We had to go much farther offshore than I would need to go that deep off of Roatan. I mean, we were probably 10 or 12 miles offshore. And he chose to stop the towing a little shallow. We could have easily gone a little deeper, and that would have been a better test. But I think that was an indication of his lack of faith in that vessel. And when we got down there, he didn't do any of the driving in my recollection. He immediately, I believe I was the first one to drive, but he basically insisted, it was his idea, nobody asked to drive, had each of us drive. And I think that was his kind of sick way of, if we had imploded
we were a little bit in control of our own destiny, because when we were driving, we were needing to go towards deeper water the idea was really we were trying to get to the exact depth of the Titanic to confirm the hull was safe for that depth. He knew at that point what the cross-section of the hull looked like. He knew that it had been hit by lightning. He knew that his engineer had quit, that would refuse to go in it, that the Lockridge was refusing. I didn't know any of these things. So we got down there, and it's making noises that, the sound of a carbon fiber band breaking when it's in a 5-inch thick matrix is a lot of energy being released. And we were all clearly a little disnerved, but he had warned us, and I think nobody wanted to be the one to, say they wanted to go up first. But I remember that at one point when I was driving, you didn't have a compass in front of you. The compass was on the screen, I believe, and you were actually able to drive to deeper water, and the window was a little distorting in terms of being able to tell the slope on the bottom, but you could actually drive to deeper water by the cracking sounds would amplify when you got deeper. And at some point, I don't remember who, we were all like, well, that's probably close enough. We've been down here long enough, and we went back up. And what I wrote him in the emails, and which is even more concerning than the cracking sounds that happened on the way down or while we were at the bottom, is that there was a kind of like a grand finale of cracking sounds as we were getting close to the surface, which I'm not a carbon fiber expert, but just thinking about it logically, the only way that you get a whole lot of more cracking when you're coming back up is that material degraded so much that it stored energy that was then released as the pressure was released. And, that's what I wrote him in the email.
So you had mentioned a lightning strike. Did Mr. Rush or anybody at OceanGate prior to your dive on that Titan hull, did they tell you that there was a lightning strike in the vicinity of the Titan hull in the Bahamas?
I don't believe so. I think the first time I heard of a lightning strike was reading about it.
Do you know the damage a lightning strike will do to a vessel?
I'm sure it would be extensive, especially to a carbon fiber hull that's conductive.
If you had known that, would you have gone on the test dive?
No. If I had known there's a lot of things that if I had known, I wouldn't have gone. People have told me that I was, stupid, naive, but really what it came down to was at that point, I had no reason to believe that Stockton was a liar, and I had no evidence of any lies on his part. And when he said that he did a proper amount of testing, he didn't, he's a trained engineer. He's not an idiot. He's got this whole organization behind him. A lot of the things I've learned in the last 18 months or whatever have been very shocking.
Recorder, can you please bring up Exhibit 073? It's a history-making deep-sea dive to 3,760 meters with 4 crew members. And in the fourth paragraph, it states, the dive, which was validated by a representative from Lloyd's Register. And this was the April 19th, 2019 dive in the Bahamas. Did you have any communications with this validator from Lloyd's Register?
No, the whole classing, like all that validation was Stockton. I wasn't allowed to be in that. I really wasn't allowed to be in operations unless something went wrong.
Do you know why they would say that the dive was validated by a representative from Lloyd's Register?
That was Stockton's doing. I didn't validate it. No, in April 2019, that told me you can't go to the Titanic, like it killed it.
So in April of 2019, this was the dive where there was four crew members, including Mr. Rush.
Mm-hmm.
And they went down to 3,760 meters.
Yeah.
Was there a representative from Lloyd's Register there in the Bahamas that you're aware of?
I think so. Like, I remember vaguely. I'm not even sure I was there for that dive, but all that talk, when serial number 1 was built, Stockton had a vehicle, and Tony became less and less important, and I had less and less input. Right? So I didn't know.
So subsequent to this dive, in June of 2019, an OceanGate pilot was conducting a pre-dive inspection and identified a crack in the carbon fiber. When were you made aware of this identification, and what were your steps taken?
Right. We have to back up a little bit to December 2018. In December 2018, Stockton wanted to be done with coal dives. And in December 2018, when Qual wanted to be done, when we wanted to be done with Qual, and Stockton could then load it up and send it to, when I say it, send Titan to Newfoundland. Sure, it met all the operational objectives, but we still needed to look at the data a little bit, and part of the discipline that I would put in it is I would still look at the data and tell them whether or not we can continue on. So we had a meeting in the winter, spring of 2019. He wanted to go to the Titanic, and I came to him with the acoustic data and strain and set up a meeting and said it's not clean. Like, we still can't do it. There's something going on. And an extension of this report here, I showed him the pictures I have of the AE data that showed something's going on in the center of the case. Something's going on in the left side of the case. You need more dives, and I can't. It was the maddest I've seen Stockton, for sure. So they went and conducted another dive, and I wanted a few more clean, but that turned out not to be clean. So the data from that I don't remember that data had totally come back ready to go, but I got a picture. I said, I think the email was, "Hey, Tony, is this supposed to be there?" I said, "Nope, that's a crack. Like, the hull's done." So I left my desk and I went to Bob Schumann, and he was the CEO at the time. And I said, "Titan's got a crack in it." I said, "The hull's done." Then I spent a couple hours trying to convince people that, no, this is not salvageable. And I was on a plane, I think the next day, with a couple of other folks down to the Bahamas to go take a look at it. And we started carving it out and noticed that the crack was bigger than we thought, just by the picture. So it was subsurface.
One of our pilots found a crack in the sub. That was not public knowledge, and they said, do not say anything to anyone.
So once the crack was identified, and you had gone out to the Bahamas,
yeah,
and you confirmed that there was a crack, what was your communications back with Mr. Rush?
I told him the hull's done.
And what were your next steps at that point?
Put together a presentation for Brian Spencer to help us understand this. Like, how did this happen?
So to the best of your knowledge, there was a Titanic expedition scheduled for July of 2019, correct? So at that point, as the director of engineering, was your recommendation to cancel the
I killed it.
expedition?
I wouldn't sign off on it. So I got terminated.
Recorder, I'm going to ask you to please bring up Exhibit 54, which was the Titanic Survey Expedition Update. It was from the Strategic Director of OceanGate Operations. Sent a letter to mission specialists stating that the reason for the cancellation of the 2019 Titanic expedition was due to the loss of the support vessel.
Right.
Were you aware that this was the case that was being told to the mission specialists?
I am.
Was there any plan to tell them that there was there a hull available for the 2019 expedition?
No, that was Neil, Stockton, and Joel. The business part of that, I know it went on, and I'm glad my office was in another section of the building. It wasn't true. We didn't have a hull.
And why did you depart the company?
Got fired.
When did you get fired?
June 2019. Because I wouldn't let him go to the Titanic. Allegedly, what Stockton tells me, he invited me to lunch and told me that Mike Ferlotti and one other board member told him that I should have known that the hull was compromised and it wouldn't work. And either he or I had to go, and Stockton said, it's not going to be me.
Coming up in the second and final part of this documentary, we will explore Titan's new hull, the path to Titanic, and what unfolded during OceanGate's expeditions to the famous wreck site. We will hear more from those who testified about the lack of classification, OceanGate's financial strain, culture, and operations. We will also take a look at the media released by the US Coast Guard, such as audio and video footage, as well as their final report into the incident, including what and who was to blame, and what recommendations were made to avoid a similar disaster in the future.